In a world where everything seems to be going wrong all the time, few things sound more appealing than a clean slate. The idea of reverting back to a self untainted by patriarchy or capitalism or colonialism or trauma sounds pretty lovely. This is an instinct we see everywhere. A few decades ago, the Riot Grrrl movement used girl to evoke the freedom of childhood, a time before gender norms solidified themselves in our consciousness, yearning for a utopia that lies in the past. And today, the internet uses the word girl more than ever. While trends like girl dinner or hot girl walks had their biggest moment in 2023, girl continues to be attached to nearly everything.
We were girls together.
Of course, social media certainly didn't invent our interest in a pre-social self disconnected from the world's ills. Going back a few millennia, even the literal Garden of Eden centers around the fantasy of life before norms and shame and socialization. A little more recently, philosophers have long been interested in the state of nature, how the world would look and humans would behave without society or political organization. Clearly, we are both curious and optimistic about a hypothetical self who is unburdened by society's norms and expectations. And with the popularity of Severance and Poor Things, we appear more interested than ever.
The idea of having a brain that is brand new, what would that be?
These stories champion a self untainted by the world's problems. Their protagonists' minds and behaviors are safe from the pull of capitalism or patriarchy, respectively.
The Eden before the fall, like, your character hasn't bitten the apple of the knowledge of good and evil. She doesn't know.
Right.
That's wonderful.
So, if this fantasy shows up across mediums, and in real life and fiction, it seems worth some further exploration. Is this a liberatory, powerful reshaping of the political imaginary? Is it a harmful cop-out that avoids real engagement? Why are we so interested in it, and why does that matter? Both Severance and Poor Things, which I will be spoiling a bit throughout this video, present us with characters who have been deliberately reset. In these worlds, the socialization of a capitalist and patriarchal society has a corrupting, constraining influence, and so these characters have achieved freedom by forgetting, or never knowing, society.
He reminds me of how you used to be.
Okay.
Dylan.
Specifically in Severance, in which workers split their consciousness into a work innie and out-of-work outie, Helly arrives as an innie with no memories and no ideological baggage. She lacks any of the socialization that made Helena, her outie and head of Lumen, so vehemently pro-Severance. Her goals and desires therefore feel far more authentic, free from Helena's learned obsession with capitalism and productivity. The villains of these stories are socialization embodied. Helena is distinguished from Helly by the cruelty that her upbringing has taught to her.
Helly was never cruel.
She's a symbol of what happens when you are socialized by capitalism to be callous and profit-driven. Similarly, Duncan, Bella's lover and travel companion in Poor Things, symbolizes total adherence to patriarchal norms. He serves as a foil to her naivete as he is fatally stifled by his obsession with norms.
Your behavior is unconscionable.
These villains are not only objects of fear or hate, but also pity, because they aren't innately evil. Unlike how Harry sees it in Poor Things, being human isn't what makes them bad.
We are a fucked species.
Rather, society and socialization have made them cruel. And so it's no surprise that our protagonists, free from these constraints, seem to live better lives. Certainly, Bella appears to be having a pretty good time. Like Helly, hers is a story of rebirth, as she's been created by putting a child's brain into an adult woman's body. She has no knowledge of social norms, especially gendered social norms.
All of these things that women are conditioned a whole lifetime through do not apply to her.
This makes her delightfully unaware of how she's expected to act when it comes to sex.
Why do people not just do this all the time?
Polite society.
I must go punch that baby.
Or anything else. Her disassociation from society grants her the freedom to do what she wants, shamelessly.
A woman plotting her course to freedom. How delightful.
Needless to say, there's something pretty blissful about this, for female audiences who feel constrained by sexist judgment, but also really for anyone who wishes social norms didn't have so much of an impact on them.
That you could have the kind of mind that isn't taught to be a certain way, I think that's very inspiring.
Given how nice this seems, it's no surprise that a longing for a self unburdened by norms doesn't just appear in film. In fact, it's perhaps most explicitly stated through online girlhood trends.
I'm also just a girl.
It feels like almost any experience or tendency could be labeled as girlhood or just a girl today, so the content the word girl is associated with is often less relevant than the actual choice of word. Why do we want to label our experiences as girlhood, not womanhood? What is appealing about imagining oneself as a girl? While as Anna Marks notes in the New York Times, these trends are expressing a yearning for freedom. Framing ourselves as just girls or our adult lives as girlhood reveals a desire to revert back to a pre-social self, a girl. Noticing the negative things society has led us to believe about gender and longing for a time before this occurred. This TikTok perhaps puts it best. The uploader writes, "How it feels thinking about the innocent girl I used to be before I became aware of the brutal realities of being a woman living in the patriarchy." This is the tone of many of these posts, which often lament how socialization, or sometimes a specific man, brought them to become painfully aware of the gendered expectations placed on them. We wonder, optimistically, who would I be if I didn't grow up with the constant societal pressure to look and behave a certain way? What if I was still an unaware, relatively unsocialized girl? Therefore, like for Severance and Poor Things, online proponents of girlhood root freedom and agency through disconnection, not knowing diet culture, not knowing gendered expectations, not being taught by your weird dad to prioritize corporate success above everything, not knowing how society villainizes women's sexuality. But of course, an existence free from socialization isn't as utopic as we might assume it to be. Certainly, few people would come away from watching Severance feeling pro-Severance. We see in the show how unpleasant it is to be cut off from the world.
Do you have a family?
You'll never know.
And how the innies would happily accept the painful complexities of the outside world in return for its upsides. Gretchen! Bella, too, is not content in her naivete. She longs more than anything to explore and understand the world.
Do you want to see what the world is really like?
Yes.
Like how the preteen girls we wish to revert back to are excited to grow up, these characters typically crave the very thing we're trying to rid ourselves of, entanglement with the good and bad of society. Even more importantly, though, severing from the world is not only undesirable, but impossible. As we see through Mark's character in Severance, his real-world traumas persist even for his innie.
At work, you'd come in sometimes with red eyes. You carry the hurt with you. You feel it down there, too.
This is true on a personal level, but importantly on a systemic one as well. For the innies, being individually disengaged from or unaware of capitalism and corporate culture does not cure them of its effects. If anything, it makes them even more helpless in face of it. Their ignorance is the very thing making it so difficult to combat Lumen.
Who are you people?
Poor Things tells us something similar. The film is about experiencing and engaging with the world, even all its flaws, not avoiding it. When Bella encounters horrors, she is rightfully heartbroken, yet she doesn't wish to be unaffected.
I am finding being alive fascinating.
Once again, this is more than a question of individual biography. Entering the social world allows Bella to re-signify, play with, and subvert larger social norms in unexpected ways. I think there's no thinker more relevant to this conversation than everyone's favorite recipient of the 1999 World's Worst Writing Prize, Judith Butler. Butler describes agency as a reiterative or rearticulatory practice, immanent to power, not a relation of external opposition to power. In other words, we exercise agency within power structures, not outside of them.
Your so-called boss may on the clock that taunts you from the wall, but my friends, the hour is yours.
Just as Mark can't heal his trauma by stepping around it, we're largely unable to address the patriarchal and capitalist norms we fear from outside of them. What Butler points us towards is the idea that agency is less about escape and more about rearticulation, that we can draw political power from living our lives under capitalism and patriarchy, inescapably socialized by these forces, yet repeating those processes differently. This is precisely what Bella does. She re-signifies and subverts norms by repeating them.
Confine yourself to the following 3 phrases. How marvelous, delighted, and how do they make the pastry so crisp, yes?
He's very unwell. I fear he will not see the year out.
Oh.
How marvelous.
In that scene in particular, she plays with what she's been instructed to do, exposes its silliness, yet simultaneously repeats these norms. Butler's framing here lets us see how the reiteration of norms doesn't only consolidate a particular regime of discourse or power, but also provides the means for its destabilization. When she and Duncan dance, too, Bella dances with and against him, a pretty good metaphor for the way she approaches social norms in general. As Butler writes, this is a process that can excite one's sense of agency, play, and possibility. And indeed, what makes Bella's journey exciting is not just that she's doing what she wants, but that she's transforming the norms assigned to her, and having fun doing it. I think the same idea applies to our online interest in girlhood. Needless to say, there can be negative aspects of this. I could talk for hours, and have talked for hours, to my friend's dismay, about how damaging and ridiculous things like girl math are.
How do you girl math?
You've probably heard this discourse plenty of times. That said, it can be useful to put ourselves in Bella's shoes or Helly's shoes, considering the systems and norms we take for granted and how we might exercise agency within them, from the lens of that hypothetical pre-social girl. This fantasy can be productive in that it allows us to identify what we find painful about the world we're shaped by, and denaturalize these things by remembering that they're socially constructed. But it's also important to remember that we can't remain in our severed girlhood forever or actually wipe the slate clean. As Butler urges, and Bella Baxter demonstrates, we can reshape and resignify. We can, and usually have to, continue on within systems that sometimes shape us for the worse. But within all this, we can still do things differently.
I am not sorry. If I know the world, I can improve it.
Thanks so much for watching, and hi again if you're a returning subscriber. It has been so long since I last posted, so I'm sorry about that. I don't really have a reason except that I was just pretty busy, but I'm really excited to be back. I definitely have missed reading through and responding to all the insightful comments you guys leave, so please let me know down below what you think about Severance and Poor Things and girlhood and freedom.